Hello, welcome back to our 30-minute design challenge. Can't believe a week's gone already. We're going to have a look at a new format this week, as mentioned on the post on Monday, where I'm going to set a challenge on the Monday, and you guys can have a go at the 30-minute design challenge. If you're happy with the outcome, then you can send the designs over. I will then post them onto an album on the Project Cabin Fever page each week, and I'll just have a quick run through before I have a go myself. So I've got up my game a little bit this week. So if we have a look at some of the examples that we have already, so I'll just share my desktop. We can see the album I've created for this week, which most of these designs are for the challenge which I set, which was a tourism promotion for the Mid Wales area, looking at how we can get the area and then some of the beautiful local attractions we've got out there once COVID-19 is over and in our rear view mirrors. So if we can have a look at some of the examples, first of all, start with Ken Rees. Ken's a designer who's been working with us at Pixelhaze on a work experience and on a paid basis over the last few years. Ken's cheated this week. He's created this using Adobe Photoshop. However, I think that's well worth cheating because I think the results are really good. Really nice novel idea here of integrating the dragon into Raiders clock tower in the center of the town. Really like the overall impact and the message this gets across. But as I said, Ken, you cheated a little bit, so I'm hoping to see next week's entry done completely in Canva, if at all possible. But great job on that one. We then can move on to, this is Charlotte from Wyside. She created this sample before this week's challenge, so I'm still waiting to see what she's come up with in her 30-minute design challenge this week. But this was a really nice take on the Support the NHS social media graphic we created last week. I really like the color scheme and using the rainbow effect on there as well. Really nice, punchy and very clear social media graphic. Great job. As we then move into Will Hammond and his colleagues, I believe most, if not all of these, were carried out by students in Northumbria University. I just wanted to flick through these quickly as well. Like the circle effect on that and using the Welsh map. Really nice, simple and effective. One thing I will say, guys, if you can just add the Project Cabin Fever hashtag on your designs each week, that's one mandatory I'm going to ask to put in there so we can get the message out there as well, and also some sort of call to action on these graphics as well. But I really like the effect and using the circles for that. As we go through then, so we've got this one which is better at tying in some of the social media channels. I like the use of the QR code. Probably I would say for this one, just simplify it, streamline it a little bit, go with one theme and go with that. And hopefully on the example I show later, although the pressure's on, I can show how we can do that. But this one's more informative, and I like the balance of text against images here. Then we move on to another one which is focusing on the beacons. I've got this blown up to full screen, so obviously where it's been used, it won't be quite so pixelated or fuzzy in the background, but I really like the cutout effect and the simplistic art style here. Use of two nicely complementing fonts on there and getting the size and the balance right. So this was a really nicely done job. And then finally, we've got this one, which I really liked, the simplicity of it again, using some keywords to get the message across. I like the use of the circle, the image within the circle. I think that keeps it nice and interesting and yeah, nice, very personal, welcoming font. So great job, guys. Now it's over to me. So I'm going to start the clock now. I'm 5 minutes in, so I've got 30 minutes from now to start creating a graphic. I'm hoping I'll be done a little bit sooner this week. So I'm going to create a design. And I'm going to create it an A4 document. So I'll go for traditional poster size. I could blow this up to A3 or reduce it, or even create a square version off the back of it. So the effect that I'm going to go for, I did have a quick look to make sure that the elements were here so I could actually do what I wanted to do, but I can promise I haven't done any of the design work yet. So I'm going to go for a keyhole effect. And one thing that's really important with this, so when I add it in, is that it's cut out. So I can add an object or a photo in that. Because the key message I want to get across is, that's a terrible pun, I'm very sorry. Yes, the key message I'm trying to get across here is that Builth Wells, as I see it, is a gateway to Mid Wales and a gateway to some of the beautiful spots that we have locally here. And so I want to work on a play on that effect. And yes, that pun wasn't intended, just a happy accident. So we're going to use the keyhole as the effect of keeping control of the design as we go through it. So I'm going to enlarge that graphic. And because this is a vector graphic, it'll keep it nice and rasterized, or it should do at least, although I am seeing a little bit of fuzziness there, but we'll get away with that. Many of the graphics on here are using SVG files, which use mathematical formulas to scale the graphic up or down. That means you keep nice smooth edges. This one, I believe, is using a PNG file format, which is bitmap, which means that every block of this is built up using pixels. That's why we're seeing a little bit of fuzziness when we're enlarging that image. However, we can change the color, so I'm not sure what's happening there. It could be a case of it'll smooth when we go to download it. But that's the initial effect. I haven't decided on colors just yet. And what I'm going to also do now is add in 2 more elements. So if I go to see all on here, those are recently used. I want shapes, and I'm going to put rectangles in. And I'm going to use the same color. So this is a little bit of a hack where I want that cutout effect of that keyhole. And I'm going to change the colors of these blocks. So I'll duplicate that one and move it to the bottom. And we've got that keyhole shape that I'm hoping will sit nicely in the middle of the design. That's the first effect that I was going for. I was thinking of doing something a little bit more detailed, so more of a rustic, almost photo created lock, but that's not going to be possible on Canva simply because I don't have the option to cut out shapes or merge shapes together. I could, and I might do it as an alternative challenge next week to show you how I can do something more detailed and more photorealistic using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator combined. But that's not our challenge for this week. So with that in place, we've got our frame. We can now look at adding in some photos. So if I do a search for Elwyn Valley, there are photos within Canva. Now, if you have the Pro version, which is the paid version of Canva, all of these assets are now free on Pro. It's an announcement that Canva made in the last week, which I warmly welcome, because it means that there is a huge stock library on here now that you pay your, I think, £14–15 a month, or I think it's about £100 per year, and then you've got access to all these stock photos. Brilliant idea. I think they're going to, as a company, do very, very well out of that as well. So I'm going to move that behind, and you can already start to see the type of effect that I'm going for. But what I'm going to need to do is to put that at the back right at the end, because the moment I put it behind, I can no longer select that as the active layer. So what I'm going to need to do is undo and get this photo as I want it first before moving it behind the keyhole, if that makes sense. I also make sure that I want, this is quite an iconic image of Elwyn Valley. It's used quite heavily. We may look at some additional options. I might do a theme of these. So we do one on the Brecon Beacons. We might use one on the bridge in Builth Wells, with the bull probably, just to get the impact across. But we can use multiple locations within Brecon to create a theme for these artworks. How are we doing for time? We're just over 5 minutes in. Okay, what I could do here is I could apply an effect to tie it in with the overall theme. So I don't want to take it away because we've got a lot of natural beauty within these photos anyway, but I might just try a few different effects to see what comes out. Now, obviously these are weird and wacky, so we don't have to go quite so crazy with it, but there's some really nice photo effects built in. Or I could try something using duotone. So you got monotone, which would be black and white or one color. Duotone brings in two colors, whether that's a neutral and a single color or two colors combined to get this effect. And so for example, we can go for a very aged effect for it. Or we can go for some of these effects. So once we've got an effect, we can then change the highlight color, the shadow color, and then the intensity. So the highlight color, we can go any option we want. So I might go for something a little bit more neutral. Oops. I go for peppermint. And if I click on it twice, I can then edit it. I can also really take down the intensity of it. So what we've got here now, I keep clicking the wrong place, it happens. So I'm just going to go back to effects. Could be a case of Canvas might be running into a few difficulties. So we'll soldier on and see if we can get this sorted. So if I apply an effect, there we go. That's what I was wanting, is that peppermint effect. So it keeps it on the same kind of color palette going through. Yeah, it's me. So now I know what I want. I'm going to go into peppermint, select that, click on it again, and I can go into the settings where I can adjust the intensity of it. So I can just bring a hint of that in as I want, but I'm going to go all out with it and keep the intensity up. What I can then do is, once I've got that, is go to filter, and I can apply a filter, which is very similar to your Instagram style filters, or I can manually adjust. So I can change the tint, or I can also bring out the saturation. So if I want to do a little bit more punch within that color, I can. And likewise, I can increase the contrast to make it look a little bit sharper. Okay, I'm going to go for that. So now when we drop this behind the keyhole, it's getting there, only I think I want this reflection of the tower to be more centralized. So again, I'm going to select the undo button, just making sure that I haven't got this either too high or too low against the backdrop. I'll try that now. Yeah, that's more what I was looking for. So now we've got our main element that we wanted to focus on. We've got our theme for our design. We're going to work on some of the text now. I'm going to change the color first. So that's just my Pixelhaze brand color, which I think we're going to go for something slightly more muted. So we'll bring more of the grays. Into it. And then likewise for the other shapes as well. Now I've added the photo once, it's easy to add it a second time. So what I wanted was a color scheme that focuses on that photo, so the photo is enhanced within it. So if you go for too strong color around it, it may bring the focus onto the wrong areas. Okay, so we've got that effect. We'll move on to the text now, and we'll have a look at some options that we could add in. So likewise with the example last week, we can use some preset font structures, or we can start with something completely different. So I'm going to go for this option. So I'm going to separate these by selecting on them, select on group. What all they are two separate text blocks put together in a way that could work quite nicely. And I'm going to reduce the font size and also increase the line height here. Now, one thing I like is to make sure we've got lots of spacing around this. So I think now, in hindsight, looking at it, I'm going to bring this keyhole down, and I might even just bring it in from center. So I'm using on a Mac the option, I can't remember what the tool is on a PC, but I could bring it in there, and I could actually go for a different approach in terms of having the circle and having a different image around it. In fact, I think I might do that. So this is very much changing it on the fly. So we've got the circle around the keyhole. So I'm going to leave that there, but obviously I want a separate image in the middle to what appears around the outside. So this wasn't the original plan, but I thought we're not quite halfway yet, so we've got plenty of time. That's the white text there, which will appear again in a bit. So what I could do is choose a separate photo. For example, this one. Move it up so it fills the screen. The moment I enlarge it over top of the screen, it will then default to the background, or it usually does. There we go. So with that photo now as the background, obviously it's not quite what I'm looking to achieve there yet. I've got to position this one backwards. This is where there's a little bit of musical chairs. And now I can bring in the handles of this so it's not any wider than the keyhole. So that means that we don't get any overlap with the circle. Once I've got that cropped down so it's wide enough to fit over the keyhole, but not too wide that is going to disrupt that circle, I can then move that image backwards behind the keyhole. Now this is still not looking, it's taking too much away from that circle in the center. So with that in mind, what I can do now is apply some effects to this. So I could add an overlay first. And then I go to adjustments, and then there is a blur effect. So I can apply a nice blur effect to that background. As you can see, it's quite a strong effect, so it's blurring it very, very quickly. So I'll try it on just 8 to start with. And I'm going to reduce the size of both the keyhole. So we've got nice even spacing either side and enough space for that keyhole to breathe. I'm going to have to position that one backwards and then reduce the size of this graphic. So it's again large enough to fit over the keyhole, but not too large that we're losing key information. Okay, I always do this. There's a combination that I don't know, I need to know how to fix between my mouse and my keyboard that zooms in there. The only way I can fix this is to go out of the file, refresh on the Canva page, and then go back into the artwork, and then it resets up to what I want to. So I can now position that backwards. We've got our keyhole, we've got our background image, and you can see I've already changed this on the fly. But now I'm much happier because we can see that title much easier. Unlocking, opening. I think we'll go with opening. Don't have to be quite so specific. I'm going to keep the same font because I quite like the combination of the two. So what I might do is just reduce the letter spacing so I can keep that font size. Again, to get the effects and all the content that I want in, I'm going to have to go slightly smaller on the keyhole again, position it up. And again, position backwards, do the same then with the photo, centrally align it, and then move that one backwards. I think this is probably colors a little bit too strong around there. It doesn't give enough focus on the keyhole. So I might just select that photo. Again, go to adjustments, and then there's a saturation option. So I might go for that for the neutral color. This circle, I might bring in an alternative color, too light. So here are just some options on there, or I could go with a different tone altogether. We've got lots of options here. It's finding something that ties in with the look I've got. The navy and the pink goes together really well, actually. So what I could do is just tone that down a little bit, or just tweak it. And we can use multiple colors. So each campaign could have a different color scheme. And what I'm going to do now, just to finish this off, is duplicate that text block. So I'm using Railway for these titles. There's no italic option, but I think we'll just go with that, with just not having quite text. So final step then obviously is duplicating this again. I might reapply the bold and then add my hashtags in. There we go. Once I've selected those. So it's a balance, because we won't need to put enough information to get the message across, but we also don't want to put too much in. So we're ending up with a problem where the message becomes too convoluted and we're losing some of the impact that we set out to achieve in the first place. I think that's probably just about enough text on there. I can play around with the spacing a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is put a band over this just to separate it from the main message. So what I can do here is just go back to elements, add a rectangle, shrink it down vertically, and then move it over top of that. And then I can change the color. make it a little bit darker. There we have it. So we now have our social media graphic with about 9 minutes to spare, or our poster. What I can do now is tweak the color scheme, because I'm not sure on that pink, if I'm being honest. I think actually the more cerise pink looks better. Even it's a bit more striking, and it would stand out from a distance. So if I wanted to see how that looks further away, you can just reduce the percentage to get that effect. Can I still see the text? Now we've gone for a script-based font, which is always harder to read, but it's also more engaging. So it's about getting the balance right. As you can see, I've not used that for the entirety of the text on the graphic. It's important just to simplify it when we're trying to get the message across. So now we've got that in place, we can duplicate this. And then in the time we've got remaining today, we can have a look at some other options. So we'll keep the fonts the same. We will tweak the colors. Just to show you what we can do. We can adjust the hue or the tint of this graphic. So we can change the color scheme then. So we've got campaigns with different effects. And now we can again position that one backwards. We can then add a new photo into the keyhole. Maybe we can use Brecon Beacons. There we go. So this is quite an iconic image, just used quite a bit. And we can just finally reduce that down again. Just move it backwards just to see if we get enough of the effect so we can see what it is. Yep, happy with that. Move that forward. Then we can go to the effects, add a new duotone that's more violet in nature. So more of the purples. Click on the settings. We might go slightly lighter with the highlights so we can see more of the detail. And we can go to the adjustment options, ramp up the contrast. And also the saturation as well. We want this to really jump out. Excellent. So that's looking really nice. We can position that backwards. You could do an effect which you don't apply any color effects to the photos, but this is partly a training programs to show you what you can do with Canva with a few different effects. What I'm going to do with this background is I'm going to take it out and swap it with that very same photo or something very similar. I might go for this one actually, just so that the textures and even with the blur applied are more in line with what we're looking to achieve. So I'm going to take that up so again it fills over the page and then it becomes the background. Once I've got that in place, I can go again to our effects, go for our violet effect, but not as strong, and then adjust and then add a blur. So we've got our two different banners. I think I prefer that color scheme, but you can have a play around with those effects and those colors as much as you like. That's just my take on this week's challenge. I really enjoyed having a look through some of the samples sent through in this week. If you want to have a go next, you can either have a go at this one or next Monday, I will be announcing a new challenge and we'll be having I'll look at that next Thursday again. So if you can get your designs in by a week today, I will talk them through it if you're happy for me to do so. And yep, let's keep the creativity going. Cheers, guys.